So there are still some cell phone numbers listed in some of these old emails, the ones we're going over today, that involve Michael Flynn and the firm he was associated with that worked on some of these very unfortunate and large-scale data mining and propaganda operations that originally were applied by the U.S. government and their private contractors to other countries, and particularly the Arab world, and then inevitably, just a few years later, were used against the American public, which is exactly what some of us were warning about before we went to prison or died back in those days. So we're going to call up one of the guys who was actually spoke to this guy back in 2011. I recorded it. I put it on YouTube. YouTube deleted it. It had been quite, YouTube is under the control of Google. Google happened to be involved, along with Apple, in these discussions in 2010 about this program, Romascoin. And so quite naturally, they deleted my video in which I recorded the interview with this guy I was writing about as a journalist who, So what I did back then was I uploaded a new video. It was a transcript of that same video. This time I did both the voices, myself and this John Lovegrove guy. This is a guy from TASC, a major contracting firm. And I did his voices kind of unfairly. I made him, I used a bunch of amusing, wacky, foppish voices for him. But you know what? Left me with no choice, So let's see if John Lovegrove still has the same cell phone number.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Yeah, right now we're going to call instead a certain. Never mind. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, is Mr. Lovegrove?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Hey, thanks for calling me back. This is Barrett Brown. I think you and I spoke years ago about the Romascoin recompete, and I wanted to just do another pass by you on this. I know it's something you guys can't really discuss in general by policy, but it seems that Michael Flynn's, the firm that Michael Flynn was linked to in the 2016 election controversies, White Canvas Group, it looks like they were listed in one of these documents you guys had with Chris Clare and Aaron Bart, all of them, and Apple and Google, etc., as involved in this recompete attempt. And in addition to that, it looks like they were paired with HB Gary Federal itself on the two areas in which they were helping. And so I just wanted to just call and just reach out for comment. I know you can't give any probably, but I have to ask, as a matter of policy. So is that something you can speak to regarding Michael Flynn, his associate who run the White Canvas Group?
I'm not remembering anything you're talking. What's your name again?
Oh, sorry. This is Barrett Brown. Let me.
Barrett Brown. Yeah,
yes.
Heard from you in a while.
Yeah, I was in prison for a long time, so I was out of action. So this is what I'm referring to is back in 2010, TASC, Mantech to some extent. All those firms. You guys worked for quite a while to try to win that contract when it came back up. Northrop Grumman and SAIC held that Romascoin contract, and you guys worked for quite a while to win it before the U.S. government changed their minds and put out Odyssey instead. And I don't know if Odyssey ever went through. That's when the emails stopped from our end, because that's when they were hacked shortly after that. But anyway, so I was just calling because we happened to find this morning, discover when I was actually searching through some of these other emails that General Flynn, who had his own firm, of course, Flynn Intel Group, but also was very closely involved with White Canvas Group, they come up here in one of these emails where you guys are listing both prospective and confirmed partners on some of these capabilities that you needed to pull together to make this work. And the reason I'm interested, the reason some other people are interested, is that that firm and Flynn's own firm, in addition to having been involved in that, or at least White Canvas group were both later on involved with Archimedes, SCL, Cambridge Analytica, and Palantir, which of course Palantir wasn't involved in your recompete deal, in the 2016 election Facebook data mining stuff. And unfortunately, I'm kind of a half-competent guy. We never were able to figure out what Romas coin, how it worked exactly. All we could really determine with what we had from the emails was that it involves data mining, involves a lot of complex outputs, and inputs via cell phone games, all these things you guys have going on. And so unfortunately, it's kind of above my pay grade to determine how similar these kinds of things in Operation Titania, or Project Titania, which I guess you probably weren't involved in, that was SCL and Archimedes as well. How similar these things were to the things that are now being done and probably be done in future elections, the data mining, the Facebook and scraping and all that, without violating any of the NDAs and that kind of thing. I don't suppose, just for old time's sake, you might be willing to tell me, am I warm? Like, does that sound like a reasonable assessment to you of like kind of what's the trajectory?
I think you're kind of reaching a little bit.
Probably, I do that. Reaching in terms of you're saying that you don't think Romas coins was functionally similar to the things that was done later?
That was pretty different than what you're kind of.
The reason I thought otherwise, because you have a lot of the same people, you got some of the same firms.
I think Flynn was still in the government back then.
He probably was. I don't think he was, and of course, he was never actually a part of White Chemistry. Right. But later on, he had his own firm, and I haven't looked at the timeline yet. So I don't think Flynn had any connection whatsoever to you guys in particular. I was just curious. I was just interested because the firm is the same, and office. I don't know. I don't know if his buddy was running the firm at that time too, and if he would have,
that was probably someone Aaron brought in. I don't even know who those guys were.
Probably, yeah. I mean, you guys had tons and tons of firms listed there, and obviously it was a complex thing. So, and I didn't even get around to like looking into half of them, which is anyway. Well, I guess that's probably all I can hope to get out of you. Very well. Well, if you ever have any questions about anything.
You're writing an article, or what are you doing?
Well, I've just finished a manuscript for a book deal I signed when I got out of prison back in late 2016. That'll come out early next year. It doesn't have this in it unless I get a couple lines in before it goes to final draft. But I'm actually writing an article about another topic, but it kind of goes into. I'm actually going after the press these days mostly. I'm upset with them because, frankly, had they paid more attention to the stuff while with prison over, they could have. It would have all gone to better use, and we were kind of. They didn't really pull their weight back then. That's what I'm saying. Persona management, all these things,
What did you go to prison for? What was that all?
So I was raided on March 6, 2012, by the FBI. They raided my apartment, and then they found I wasn't there. I had gotten a tip that they were coming. They came to my mom's place, and then got another search warrant for there. The search warrant that they had on that one. Michael Hastings later published it on BuzzFeed. You can see it. It listed HB Gary, In-Game Systems, Project PM, which was my crowd research group. We worked with Anonymous and all that kind of thing, and compiled all that information on that old website where, that was kind of our output. Listed Anonymous, and they about 6 months later. Oh, and they also threatened to indict my mother as well for obstruction of justice, because she hid some laptops. Anyway, long story short, I was the FBI agents. I found out they were working with HB Gary and some of HB Gary's some of the friends of people like Jim Butterworth, Aaron Barr. They had done some stuff to me and to some of the people around me, including loved ones, during that period that were, I think, kind of foul ball. And basically, I threatened to the FBI special agent in charge, Robert Smith, who had been the one to threaten to indict my mother. I threatened to look into him and his family the same way that Aaron Barr was doing to labor leaders back with the not with your guys' thing, but the Team Themis thing with Palantir and Barricode that came out back in 2011. And they didn't like that, and they came and raided me. And then I got charged with 11 counts of aggravated identity theft for having copied and pasted a link to files that were stolen from Stratfor by some of these hackers that I've worked with, and also one of whom, Hector Monsegur, turned out to be an FBI informant at that point. They charged me with that. That became a big deal. Obviously, all the press groups all got involved. The U.S. government, they eventually dropped those charges. I pled ultimately to interference with the search warrant, threatening a federal agent, and accessory after the fact. And that was for calling Stratfor after the hack. When I learned that the hackers in question were planning on just dumping all the emails online, I was concerned about that. Called up George Friedman and/or what's his name, the other one at Stratfor, and offered to redact anything that could have gotten some of their contacts abroad, killed or imperiled. And ultimately, that's what they used after they had to drop the linking charges. That they asked us to give them some conduct I could plead to, and that's what we came up with. That I called to redact the information and thus help the hackers in some various way. So I did about 4 years in prison and got $800,000. I did 4 years and got $800,000 restitution ordered for Stratfor. So I paid for those 5 million emails. I could pick up that tab, but
Wow.
That's how it goes. Some of the territory. Yeah, you should. There's some documentaries on all this. You can watch it, kind of see what things. I also happened to meet some Hunton and Williams people down here in Dallas recently. Of all things, kind of interesting. I'm bringing up Team Themis stuff that you weren't involved in and probably don't follow, so that wouldn't really.
What documentaries are there?
There's a couple on there on Netflix, and I think they're also free on YouTube. You don't have Netflix. One of them is We Are Legion. That came out first, right after I went to prison, and it does go into HB Gary stuff, Palantir, Aaron Barr, what we discovered them doing, and all that. There's another one that came out a little later, a couple of years later, that has a little bit more up to date on what was going on, what happened to me and Jeremy Hammond. Hammond's still in prison. He was the one who hacked Stratfor. He knew a lot of those same guys, but he wasn't involved in the HB Gary hack. He did the Stratfor hack, and then me and him. He also hacked Corvus, which I helped with some, in my non-technical way with that one. Corvus is the one that does stuff for Bahrain, and another firm called Combined Systems, which sold military-grade tear gas to the Kingdom of Bahrain for use on protesters. He hacked that one, and I wrote a statement on there and blah blah. Anyway, so you can get a sense from those documentaries.
What's the second one called?
Second one is Hacker Wars, and Hacker Wars is more of it's for the younger people kind of. It's very lots of scene cuts, quick changes, techno music and stuff. I would and there's some other stuff on you can see. You just look up Barrett Brown Anonymous or HB Gary, you'll find it on YouTube. But yeah, anyway, so there's tons of stuff on it. You might find it interesting. Let me ask you.
Sorry? Just to let you know, I was at my daughter's graduation from college when you called me.
Oh, back in 2011? Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. If I had known, I would have called another time.
Cognitive dissonance. I was there with my daughter, and then you called me up, and I'm sort of like, whoa, what's going on here? So,
right. Yeah, I missed a lot of things when I was away in prison.
Sorry to hear that.
Well, I mean, I got out of a lot of weddings, so I'm not too worried about it. But I hope that you and your daughter will have other times to.
Oh yeah, we have plenty of time.
Good. So everything's fun. Right. Anyway, so I also wrote a column from prison. You can read for the Intercept that kind of mentioned some of these things. I tried to write about Romas Coin in the last column I ended up doing for the Intercept, which is Glenn Greenwald's outfit. And the editor, who used to be fucking editor at Harper's, he was like, "No, these guys are just bragging, trying to get up business." I'm like, "No, man, these are they're talking to each other. They're not talking to clients. They're spending a year overseeing." It's like, no, they didn't meet with Apple and Google. They're just impressing people. Like, no, there are meetings listed here. Finally, I convinced them that this was a real thing that I'd already written about in the Guardian like 6 years ago. Went to prison over, and that I knew kind of well. But really sour on the press, So I'm spending less time going after, that whole, your guys' industry and more time going after my own. So sad days.
Well, that's true.
All right. Anyway, I appreciate you.
Column in the Intercept?
Yeah, I started writing a column. I started writing for Vice and the Guardian, which I'd already written for a while, right after I was locked up. And then the column that I was writing for this local D magazine, the sort of Dallas City magazine. The Intercept picked it up. It become very popular, and then I won the National Magazine Award and the New York
Oh, yeah.
Press Club Award and the National Press Guild Award, second place in that one. So I won,
Nice.
and then I won that while I was in the shoe. Actually, I was being held in the hole, medium security prison.
And you,
Oh, sorry. There's
Yeah.
there's actually another short documentary that Alex Winter did. He was the guy who was in the Bill Ted movies. You can see it on YouTube. It's he did with Laura Poitras, actually, the Snowden person with Grinwald. You know, I'm sure you're familiar with her.
yeah,
And you can see that on YouTube. It's called Relatively Free. It's got some good
yeah.
overview. It'll be a nice quick overview of the whole
Well,
thing.
I still think Stone is a traitor.
Well,
Yeah, you need to worry about are Google and Facebook.
I was very worried about Google. Yeah, I mean, I was worried about Google. They were the ones. You know, at some point, Google actually removed our website, our Project PM website, from their search results for about 2 weeks until Wired noticed. And then it came back up, and suddenly, in-game systems, we weren't the first result for them anymore. But they got away with a lot. But yeah, we've been Google, Facebook, anything with In-Q-Tel has got a hand in. This guy Gilman Louie, who I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with, but is still not a household name. Peter Thiel in particular. Yeah, they keep me up at night. So
Yeah, where do you have a web page or anything? I can kind of check some of this stuff out.
yeah, I got a couple. So there's a nonprofit that I started when I got out of prison that's kind of working to put together the stuff I was originally working on before I got involved in the Tunisian Revolution, and then HB Gary, we found them spying on us, and then we got in this big war with you guys, trying to put together this framework for sort of civic collaboration and crowdsourced research. So that's pursuanceproject.org, and so that's we got a bunch.
Say it again.
It's Pursuance, PURSUANCE project.org, and we've got a couple of ex-CIA guys on our board of directors. We got John Kiriakou, who of course is a real dissident, and Barry Eisler, who's also critical of the intelligence community, but never went to prison for leaking anything. He's more of a But he's a good guy. And then it's a few academics, some journalists, some Pirate Party people, some ex-WikiLeaks people, et cetera. So, and so that's the website I have. And then if you go to freebb.org, there's a whole list of all my articles. Go to The Intercept, Daily Beast. I wrote a Daily Beast article right after I got sentenced. Yeah, I remember I wrote it. Anyway, so there's a lot of good overviews of this. Oh, and I mentioned in the second season House of Cards. I think they're about twice, I think. So so you can pick up the story there.
So what was the site? What was 3DD? Is that the name of the site?
Sorry, what was the?
Was it 3DD?
You talking about the old site or the one right now?
No, you mentioned the site. I think you said 3DD.
Oh no, well there's a Project PM was our old group, and our website was echelon2.org. That was listed on the search warrant back then.
Yeah, I remember Project Echelon.
Yeah. But if you right now it's being hosted at Transparency Toolkit. So just Google Project PM and you'll find the new link to it, and that's still got all the old articles about your guys' stuff and projects and all that.
Okay.
And,
is it Echo Mary or?
Echo Mary. No, sorry, it's PM.
PM. Okay.
Piggyback. Yeah, I don't know the military alphabet thing there. Propaganda marijuana. That's what it stands for. So it actually stood for something from an old science fiction book. The DOJ had to go look it up. But yeah, that's still up, and you can see all that. There's a bunch of good articles about it. Most of them are inaccurate. The best there's one in The Nation that was really good, and then there's they were all kind of imperfect, the articles on what we discovered and what was going on. But that's But,
yeah,
but of course, these are articles about the stuff that you would be familiar with, so it's not like it matters. You really need to read them.
Well, it's always fun to watch.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, so you can take a look at that, and if you ever have any questions about any of this, again, it is quite interesting. I'll have this book coming out. I'll send you a copy. February 2020 goes into a lot of that. Goes into some things that you'll be aware of, and some things you might not.
Now I gotta go answer the phone.
All right. Have fun. Good to talk to you. All right. You as well. Take it easy.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye. Oh, man. That was John Lovegrove. Like I said, I spoke to him. I called him up in summer 2011, summer of LulzSec, while those LulzSec guys were off doing their thing. I was researching Romas Coin. He didn't... Oh, yeah, so you can... he didn't give me as much, like he didn't sort of facilitate and kind of bend as much as Chris Clare did in the other phone call I got through to one of those guys back then. That's on YouTube as well. I posted it earlier on my Twitter page just for old time's sake. This stuff is all now relevant again. Gonna say, and yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, they're all human beings. So he's saying that, contrary to what I think here, that that this Ramos coin deal they worked on is not terribly similar to the Cambridge Analytica stuff that some of the same people and companies were also involved in. Now, that may be true. In fact, I'm inclined to believe that from his standpoint, there are some key differences. Having said that, they both clearly involve a couple of different, very, very fundamentally similar mechanisms. One, taking in information, taking in large amounts of open source information that's out there, or to the extent possible, getting more than what is available freely via connections to social networks, communications companies, AT&T, Google, Apple. I mean, the fact that he just said you should be worrying about Apple, and this is a guy that used to work with Apple on this thing, that's telling. I spent a long time trying to get anyone at all, New York Times, fucking anyone, any of the people who had written about our stuff, written about me, love the Zeta shit, just went over and over it, and then, got it wrong, of course. Trying to get them to acknowledge that Apple and Google had met with these people, and that some of the people he met with had also just been caught doing extraordinarily dangerous things that were indefensible, directed towards informed consent itself, directed towards journalists, directed towards activists, but always ultimately directed towards the citizenry that depends on activists and journalists, and particularly good ones, to understand what's going on, to understand what overreach is occurring. That's why this was such a big deal to some of us back then. That's why it was worth it. And it's likewise, it's also why, if you go look at Aaron Swartz, some of the things he was looking into in 2011, I encountered him basically once, I recall, maybe twice. Didn't really understand who he was, didn't know how respected he was, and what other things he'd been involved in. I just knew he was one of many people I've just found myself interacting with, and he volunteered to help us look into the thing that I was most intent on back then, and that other people were as well. Persona management, the proliferation of sophisticated, very nuanced, well-positioned, hard to detect, software-assisted fake online people. Something that came up by a CENTCOM's program, which was being farmed out to private intel firms, the firm that won that contract to produce these fake online people and create the software that allowed a single airman working out of MacDill Air Force Base or Bagram to control 10 or 15 of these things and be able to do. These are like to sock puppets what Harrier jet is to a prop plane from World War I. And it's going to be, and there is nothing at all standing in the way. In fact, there's every reason for them to proceed with coupling that same technology that they'd already had in pretty good shape in 2009, 2010, as we've shown from the patents we discovered and from the contracts and internal conversations with these companies had in these emails. There's nothing stopping them from taking that really creepy thing that the OpenAI group came out a few months ago, where you write a single line and the neural networks, where the fuck, proceeds to write an entire fully made up article, oftentimes in the form of a news article with fake quotes, based on that single line you put in. You couple that with the things they already had. You even couple it with the bullshit, low end, dime a dozen, cheap trolls that they sell networks of to to use in South American elections for propaganda, and then started doing it in the U.S. and etc. There comes a point when suddenly, if you think it's difficult to get a sense of what's happening now, or to if you think individuals who are onto something or about to expose something, if you think that they are having difficulties with kind of amorphous disinformation campaigns now, if you know anything about that, suffice to say it's going to get a lot worse. And it'll be guys who are pretty decent, pretty nice guys, polite guys in many cases that do it. Sometimes it'll be people who are easy to hate, like Aaron Barr or Tom Ryan. But no matter what, everything to develop. Saudi Arabia gets it, Russia gets it, the Chinese get it. They're usually the ones who steal it directly. Sometimes these other countries and entities get it because these people will happily sell it to them. Sometimes they have to steal it, whatever. But every single thing that they do that is dangerous, even in the right hands, which don't exist, they'll become a major facet of corporate public relations, and that term will not cover how deleterious it all is. There was a number of opportunities we had back when Aaron Swartz was filing FOIA requests on persona management, which I mentioned to him earlier. Back when Aaron Swartz and I were both talking about Trapwire upon its release, when there was an opportunity to make a case, make several different cases, and sort of make them all connect and say, look, this is what's happening. Even if you don't think it's frightening now or dangerous now, you obviously can't refrain from being concerned about what's going to happen in the near future, how it's going to develop, who else is going to have it, what variations are going to be done. Every time our efforts were sort of neutralized by a combination of things. Too numerous to mention, but a huge number of the things that occurred that works to discredit us and works to discredit these issues and works to reassure people that no, there's nothing worse about Trapwire, and they're definitely not connected to Cubic, because I would know, because I'm Adrian Chin. Something of that nature happened over and over again. Every single thing that we did, even the things that originally Adrian Chin wrote about, like in our favor early on, over the next several years, he bent over backwards, writing in Gawker, and then in The Nation, and then everywhere else. Made up stuff about Anonymous, attributed to Anonymous things that he had done. My favorite example: go read Adrian Chin's article in The Nation, 2014. It's called "The Truth About Anonymous's Activism," and he starts by saying that the first time I heard the term "lols," I was reporting on a 11-year-old girl who Anonymous had harassed and didn't have to get police protection because they didn't like her video. If you go back and look at the article, Chin actually wrote for Gawker on that girl, Jessie Slaughter. It was actually Anonymous is not mentioned in it. A bunch of other things are. Anonymous isn't. And it actually turns out to be Adrian Chin who was mocking the girl and posting the video and saying it's funny, and then helpfully recording the various memes that had been spawned thus far by the other garbage sites. Then he goes on and he provides an entirely contrary narrative about the HB Gary hack and what we did, and than the one he put out originally for Gawker. he is wise enough there not to use HB Gary by name. He just refers to after Anon hacks a intelligence contractor. They don't release any of the important documents until first failing to use them to extort the company into firing an employee who was investigating them. And if you go look at Adrian Chin's original article on HB Gary on that situation, nothing of the sort happens. It's also quite demonstrably false. The emails, as was recounted everywhere else, including his, were immediately provided to the public in the course of the hack before anyone spoke to any of the executives there. I know because I was the first person afterwards to talk to those executives, Penny Levy Hoagland, and then Aaron Barr. Those are recorded for my protection. Didn't protect me enough. You can see the Aaron Barr one that's online. Just look up Google Barrett or YouTube, my name and Aaron Barr's name. It's demonstrably false, and it's one of those claims that you never see anywhere else except for DOJ documents in my case and Adrian Chin articles. Similarly, anyway, it doesn't matter. I've already mentioned this stuff over and over again with him, and I've got a nice chance to address it in this article I'm doing for Counterpunch. Like I told that guy, there's no point in going after the intelligence contractors until we have cleaned the press, until we have purged it. Like I literally purged it. I want to use like euphemisms. Until we chase out and harass and intimidate the people that we can show engaged routinely in fabrications, committed crimes, got caught by the FBI, as we know because the transcripts are in my discovery and Jeremy Hammond's discovery. Kept their mouth shut about the crimes they committed that were actual statute violations while I was being prosecuted for the things, much less I don't make a great victim, unfortunately, but I remember reading that those articles, Barrett Brown may not be as cuddly as Aaron Schwartz, blah blah, which I guess is true. But Aaron Schwartz is someone who didn't get the same raking of this information, like from Adrian Chin, people like that. He was too. First of all, he was less flawed than I was in some way. He wasn't much of a obnoxious, eccentric megalomaniac as I was, for one thing. So, but on the other hand, he had much broader and different interests and focuses than some of the ones we had. The ones we had put us right there with the very worst, most disinformation dependent companies and entities in the world. So the fact that he, it didn't quite have legs that I looked into persona management and that turned out being important. It doesn't really have legs that I spoke about Trapwire and explained why it's important and who it's connected to and why we know Cubic actually does own it because they also own Intrepid and hit the same way. None of that stuff has legs, but it does have legs when you point out that Aaron Schwartz was sitting there doing FOA requests on persona management on my behalf. He was volunteered and helped out with that. That he was also talking about Trapwire. Take a look at the Rolling Stone article on me. Take a look at the article on Trapwire that Current's Daily Beast managing editor Noam Shackman wrote for something else back in the day. I think it was the Hoover Institute or something. Pretty much everything we did was neutralized, was stripped of impact, and there are very few elements of what we focused on that did not end up coming up in the 2016 election, whether via side group, which is we're still kind of determining the extent to which they were involved, because there are a number of claims that they were, even though they weren't financially retained by Trump. Archimedes, Palantir. There's a great Gawker article by Adrian Chin from about 2 weeks before I was arrested, in which he mocks some concerns I'd expressed about the New York Times and the media's failure in general to make use of the things we had acquired in those H.B. Gary emails and the Stratford emails. And he makes fun of me. He says, well, the New York Times shouldn't be blamed for not wanting to go into every boring detail in those files. Among those boring details, it turns out, was Booz Allen Hamilton, which later came up because it was Snowden's employer. Snowden management has come up a lot, the whole bot thing. Chin himself later on capitalized on that issue, reinventing himself as an expert on shit that he didn't care about back in the day. Palantir. Ironically enough, Palantir was Peter Thiel, co-founder, was the one who shut down Gawker. That means Adrian Shen and all of them who would attacked me the entire time I was trying to generate sort of warning about Thiel. Then they had to go get more different jobs, having having done everything they could to prevent my work on those things from getting ground. And they all went off to the New York Times and the New Yorker and New York Magazine and The Intercept. John Cook, who was the editor who let Adrian Shin write about that stuff, claiming I made up a kidnapping in Mexico, which he was on tape. Anyway, I've already said this over and over again. It's all kind of documented. It'll be in this article. It's sort of killing me to have to. I can take a lot of shit from the FBI, but it's really the last 6 months of looking into the press and learning how much that was the hard part, and that was when things got hard to deal with. Anyway, Michael Flynn, White, Canvas Group, Archimedes. Look at the previous posts if you want links and details and stuff to look into. We actually have some journalists looking into this now because it does connect to things that they already are aware of and care about. So that's nice. All right, adios.